All right, Nick, let's talk about the Los Angeles Chargers. The draft is now behind us. And as we always love to do, we like to dig through all of the draft picks to see if there's any hidden value there. There are players that maybe were, drafted out of their, projected values or any hidden gems in this draft class. And there's one the Chargers got that we certainly think is a special player and could be the hidden gem of this Chargers draft class. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, this Chargers draft class has a hidden gem in it, and that's none other than fourth round pick, edge rusher Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. Really special player here. I think there's a lot to love about it. We're going to dive into it right now. This first article is just a tweet to refresh everybody's memory. It says the Chargers may have just landed the steal of the draft, selecting SEC Defensive Player of the Year, Kyle Kennard, with pick number 125 of the fourth round. It's really interesting here. Kyle Kennard, a great fit for this team. I think getting a plethora of defensive edge players here to replace the whatever production Joey Bosa had left when he was playing is going to be really important here. And Kennard is just that guy. And as we see here in our first graphic here, just the production alone from Kennard, I think shows, and we talk about it on this show a lot, is people get too caught in the weeds about size and shape and, ideal, measurements and, how many reps on bench someone got at the combine. Sometimes you just need to sit down and look at the production a player has put on the field. And Kyle Kennard did a really fantastic job. 11 and a half sacks last year. He had 3 forced fumbles, recovered 2 of those fumbles. Just really a great player. And I think something important is when you look at where he got the sacks, it shows he did it against some of the highest caliber of teams as well. He was able to get 2 sacks versus the University of Alabama. He's able to get a sack and a half versus LSU. Those are 2 of the top teams in the country coming out, being able to do good work against really strong. This is LSU, phenomenal offensive line class they had coming to this draft. Alabama always has a solid offensive line as well. Being able to do big work against big SEC teams bodes well for Kennard at the next level. Something else I think that's important is his RAS score. If you look at his relative athletic score on his, composite height, weight, strength type of stuff, he wasn't quite as impressive. But when you look at the speed that he brings to the table, I think Kyle Kennard is a very quick, he's very, good first step, shifty, can really, beat someone around the edge, and that shows in his RAS score. And that's why the RAS score inevitably was so high, an 8.58 relative athletic score for Kennard. He had a 4.7 second yard 40-yard dash, a 2.7 second 20-yard split, and a 1.63 second 10-yard split. Really quick, was able to move at the combine. I think this is another reason they've added into why they selected Kyle Kennard. Just overall, a really strong player for this Chargers team. I think he adds to an important position they need to fill, and I think he could be a future star with this team. Curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick, but before we get to you, Chargers fans, in the comment section below, let us know. We're talking about the draft. We're talking about all of these players here, but specifically Kyle Kennard. What do you think about him? Do you think this guy could be the hidden gem of the draft? Obviously, some people are talking about it. The tweet said it. We're saying it. Or do you think maybe this is a guy that, not worth his salt? He's a fourth rounder for a reason. Or do you think he probably won't even make the team? Let us know your thoughts on everything Kyle Kennard in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest out of Los Angeles?
So this is an absolutely stupendous move. And you talk about value. This is the definition of finding value while also addressing a need. Like you alluded to, Joey Bosa is gone. Now with the Buffalo Bills, albeit his production in the last few years with the Chargers had dipped considerably, they still needed to replace, that 5 to 6, 7 sacks or whatever he was getting the last few years. They needed to find a way to replace that production. You're talking about a guy in Kennard here who had double-digit sacks last year with South Carolina. But even the year before that with Georgia Tech, he still managed to get 6 sacks. So he's been a very productive guy at the college level, as well as being a very talented athletic guy. You mentioned his RAS score. So you talk about being a perfect fit for the Chargers at a position of need. Great job getting it done. But let's take a step back here and focus on what a steal really means, because we hear that thrown around all the time, right? Oh, this was a steal of a pick. Oh, they got so much value, right? It's kind of thrown around, but no one ever really breaks down the numbers and dives into the data. What makes a player a steal? And we all intuitively understand what a steal is in our everyday lives, right? If there's a truck that's worth $25,000 and you buy it for $15,000, that's a steal. That's a lot of value, right? You paid 15,000, but it's worth 25. You got $10,000 of additional value because you paid $10,000 less than its actual real value, right? That's what makes a steal, is that you paid less than the actual worth. So when you go into the data of Kyle Kennard, in fact, let's pull up the graph here to really understand why this is such a steal. So here you can see a graph, just a simple kind of bar in front of you. You got the red up top, the blue on bottom. So the overall red plus blue right here is the PFF big board value ranking, courtesy of the old school Jimmy Johnson draft chart, right? So what we did is we looked at Kyle Kennard's big board ranking, looked at the value associated with that pick, and gave it the red plus blue number there. That red chunk, that little red chunk right there, is the value the Chargers gave up with their fourth round selection of Kyle Kennard, right? And that huge chunk of blue, that's extra value. To go back to my truck analogy, that's the difference between how much the truck is worth and how much you paid. Look at this delta, folks. Look at this massive separation. This is an awesome job by Ortiz in the Chargers front office. Again, the whole value of Kennard is this. They basically paid that much, and they got this much in just free money. This is what winning teams do, right? We talk about it all the time. It's not only about addressing needs. You need to find good football players, but it's also getting great value. If you do this draft after a draft, pick after pick, you will build a deep, talented team. You won't have to reach, because one of the things that happens when you reach, you end up in situations where, okay, that player didn't work out. We gave up too much. Now we need to scramble. Now we need to overpay for veterans. Now we need to trade away draft capital. You can get over your skis a little bit. The Cleveland Browns are a phenomenal example of that. If you look at what they've done for the better part of the last, 30 years, right? You don't want to do that. You're always looking for value, certainly in day 3 or later in the NFL draft. I would argue as soon as the 3rd round, maybe even before that in a lot of instances. And the Chargers here did a phenomenal job. Now, look, Kennard is a great football player. I don't understand why his ranking was as low as it was. People see it as sort of a late bloomer. He did have good supporting cast on that South Carolina defensive line. But here's the great news, Chargers fans. He has a heck of a supporting cast on the Chargers defensive front. He's got a great coaching staff. So all of the things that were a potential red flag that he had in South Carolina, he's going to have with him in Los Angeles. So all of those risks are pretty much mitigated. So not only is the value great analytically, not only is it a position of need for the Chargers, but all of the concerns, or at least most of the large ones, are completely moot going to Los Angeles as opposed to going to a different team. This is a phenomenal move by the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think we're saying it right now, but I think in the long term, many people look back and see this as one of, if not the biggest, steal of the draft.
Yeah, Nick, and I just want to touch on a couple other attributes. This is a guy who you alluded to. He played at a different team. He played at Georgia Tech for 4 years, then moved over to South Carolina and did really great. Moving from the ACC to the SEC, some people would say, okay, that's going to be tougher. He's going to dip. What did he do? Well, while he was at Georgia Tech, he was solid. He was a decent player. I don't know if the scheme fit his abilities. I don't know if he's given the opportunities to really bloom and prosper the way he was. Like you said, I don't know if it's supporting cast, but a guy who, for all intents and purposes, was just okay at Georgia Tech. He comes over in 2024 to play for the Gamecocks. And what does he do? Second team AP All American, SEC Defensive Player of the Year, first team All SEC. He won the Nagurski Trophy for the nation's top defender. He was a finalist for the Lombardi Award, the nation's top offensive and defensive line. He led his team with 15 and a half tackles for loss. He led the SEC and was 8th in the FBS with 11 and a half sacks. And he started all 12 games. So I'd say that's a pretty solid player, like you said. I don't know why he was graded so low. Obviously, the production's there. He was able to put it on the field for South Carolina in a tougher division in the SEC. He did a lot of really great stuff. I love this pickup for the Chargers. They got themselves a steal. I think Kyle Kennard, really a fantastic player that they brought in here. And just overall, I can't stress this enough. I think your analogy, when you look at the truck analogy, you look at the chart that you showed, it's the example that you gave. It's basically like paying $5,000 for the $25,000 truck. There is so much value that the Chargers are inheriting with bringing in this player. I think he's going to be a special guy for this team, and just everything he brings to the table, I think is going to show on the field this season. I think this could be something absolutely massive for the Chargers.
And just one final point to end on. I just quickly refreshed some of the criticism. I googled some criticism Kennard and why he fell. And basically, one of the big gripes is even though he'd have great games and get a lot of sacks and was very productive, they'd watch through the film and saw him get beat bad on one play, like he'd get blocked really well and wouldn't get anywhere. He'd get a sack on the very next play, but say, "Oh, we really don't like that one play where he got locked up at the line of scrimmage." And I think that's what happens too much in this draft evaluation this process. People get so focused on negative things. They can sit there and say, well, I don't like how in this one play he got blocked up. I know on the next play he had a sack, fumble, changed the game. His team won the game. He goes on to be an all-conference player. But, this one play looked really bad. Look, we're in the National Football League. He was in the SEC last year. You're going up against good players. Even the best players in the entire NFL have plays. Khalil Mack gets pancaked, right? We all know it. Justin Herbert has bad throws, right? We see this all the time. Not every play is going to be elite, but you know what separates the good players from the okay players? The guys who, I don't know, make the plays. They throw the touchdowns. They get the sacks. They force the fumbles. And that is what Kennard proved over and over and over again in the toughest competition in college football, the Southeastern Conference last year. The fact that he slid, based on the concerns I just pulled up, I'm sure this isn't all of them, but just what I quickly threw up here, because he would have one or two ugly plays a game, blows my mind, right? We're in the era of playmakers. Get me a guy on the field who will get the sack. I don't care if he gets pancaked the play before. I want him to get the sack on 3rd and 7, and that's exactly who the Chargers got here in Kyle Kennard.